Have 2:30, and we're starting a little early today because of our presenter's schedule, but thank you for joining the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities and our January webinar, Completing and Submitting the International Mentor Training Program Certification Documentation to the College Reading and Learning Association. My name is Drew Andrews, and I'm the Technical Assistance Coordinator here at the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities. Our presenter today is Michael Saenz. He's with the Student Success Center at the University of Texas, Dallas, and an expert on the CRLA certification process. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website under the Events tab for your review on a later date or to share with someone who is unable to attend today. If you're having difficulty hearing the presentation, phone numbers that can be used to call and join via phone while following the slides online will also be posted in the chat window. The chat window is, if you're not familiar with Zoom, if you move your cursor around, icons present themselves across the bottom, and there's one with a bubble that says chat. And if you click that, then you can choose to chat to everyone or to another specific member of the webinar. At the end of the webinar, you will be directed to our evaluation of the webinar. Please complete so that we will have your input when planning future webinars. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Michael.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. This is my, I believe, second time here on this webinar. I need a, I guess, show of hands, or just y'all can chime in. Does everyone remember what we talked about last time in terms of CRLA certification, or do I need to recap that real quick?
It would probably be best to recap that. I think that we do have some new folks on the webinar today that weren't on the previous webinar.
Okay, so just to recap, again, my name is Mike Saenz. I oversee what is now called our peer educator certification. That is going to be one of the changes I'm going to mention throughout today. There are a few changes coming down the pipeline with CRLA in terms of certification. The previous iteration, you had two separate certifications. You had a tutor certification, and then you had a mentor certification. And as we are growing our mentor certification, we realize there's more in the area than just mentors. So we're expanding that program certification to be called peer educator. So that includes mentors, that includes classroom leaders, that includes supplemental instructions, that includes academic coaches. So it includes a wide variety of programs that may or may not be offered at your school. But that's going to be one of our big changes is the name. Again, it's a peer educator certification. And what the certification does is it certifies the program for how they run their requirements for their mentor or peer educator program. And the four pillars of those requirements are the hiring or selection of the peer educator, the training, which is a big part of the program certification, the experience, how the peer educator gets their experience within your program, and then finally the evaluation of the program. How do you evaluate your peer educators? Are the mentees also surveyed to see how they enjoy the program? So with that said, I'm going to just kind of quickly recap again what we look for in each of those requirements, because again, this webinar is about how to apply for certification. So what certification looks like on the surface level is CRLA has a set of standard requirements. And if a program meets those requirements, as decided by the review team, then you will be certified for X number of years, depending on when you applied. So with that, what the certification does is it says you're certified to certify the peer educators or the mentors. So as the mentors or peer educators come through your program, and they meet the requirements that you told CRLA that you do, then you're able to certify those mentors as they come through your program and get your training and your experience. Any questions on that part of it, the 4 pillars and what those requirements are? And you can either type in the chat, I have the chat window open, or you can just unmute and ask a question. So if there are no questions on that, the second part is actually how to apply and getting into the details of the application. Now, I want to caveat this. If you're planning on applying within the next 6 months, everything I'm going to say today will apply to you. If you're planning on applying for certification, let's say in the fall or after that, there will be a few changes that I'm going to mention at the end of this presentation. So as it stands right now, the only thing that peer educators or mentors or academic coaches, the only thing they should really be monitoring themselves are the number of training hours and their number of experience hours. So training hours, that is the number of hours that you require them to go to your training. And that the minimum hours for a level 1 certification is 15 hours. Now, I'm going to put a pin in that because in about 6 months, we're reducing that number from 15 to 10. So that's one of the big changes that's easier on programs is it's 5 fewer hours that you need for certification. But if you apply today, it'd be the standard of 15 hours for level 1. The other requirement that the students need to keep a tab on is their experience hours. And that is when you are able to certify them a level 1 certified mentor. Can everyone hear me? I'm getting an internet is unstable.
We had just a moment where you froze for just a minute there, Michael, in your last couple of statements.
Okay, so just to recap what may have been messed up, the 2 requirements that the students really care about, the training and the experience. The training hours are 15 hours. The experience hours are 50 hours. That's 50. And that is another thing that'll be changing in a few months is we're lowering that from 50 hours to 25 hours. So if you plan on applying in the future, the requirements will be a little bit less than what they are today. So a few reasons for that. We've been trying to align ourselves with a tutor track. So if you have a tutor program that's certified, their current requirements are 10 hours for level 1 and 25 hours of tutor experience. And ever since I took over on the mentor side, the peer educator side, I kept asking, why is ours a little bit more? Why is it 15 and 50? And no one gave a good answer. So I met with the board and we decided that we're going to align them and hopefully that makes it easier for programs because there's a wide range of peer educator programs that meet 100 hours a semester. Some only meet 3 hours a semester. So getting a mentor to have 50 hours of experience before they were certified really led to a lot of people not being able to even apply because they know their mentors would never hit that many hours. So we're hoping by lowering it to 25 hours in the future that more programs will look into certification and really help get their mentors or peer educators through their program so they can add a little bit more credibility. And I say credibility because when I took over at UT Dallas, we were not certified with CRLA. We had a lot of problems with faculty members buying into our tutor and mentor programs. They didn't know how they were trained. They didn't know what the requirements were. And so once I looked into CRLA and realized there was a set standard of how programs get certified and there were certain training modules and training topics that are required to get certified. That's what really helped create a framework for our curriculum here at UT Dallas, and it really helped improve our training and really improve our mentors as a whole. So moving on with the application itself, currently we're still stuck in the pre-online form age. There is just a Word document form that you fill out, and I'm going to pull that up here in a second. If you go to CRLA.net, that is our homepage, and you'll find the certifications tab where you see the mentor certifications. And then under that, you'll see different files for the application. So I'm going to open that up real quick. Share. All right, my privacy settings are not letting it share my screen. Hang on one second. All right, are y'all able to see this file?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the current form if you were to apply today. Again, in 6 months when all these changes go through, it'll be an online form. But as of today, if you were to apply, this is what you would fill out and send in to us. Again, the very first part is very informative. Your institution, your program, your website, if you have one, contact information, etc. And as you go through here, this is just a signature line that says you're complying with copyright. Again, we don't check your copyright when you submit your bibliography and stuff. We trust that you are citing your appropriate sources and you're not stealing anyone's information. So this is the part where it verifies that you're in compliance. Now, here's, again, this form is awful, so I do apologize. This is why we're getting it changed. But the form is very simple in the sense that this is how you show us what you're doing at your program. So for mentor selection, again, there are a few requirements for selecting your mentors, and that's you have to have a minimum GPA requirement, and that used to be a 3.0. If you were on the call last time, it used to be a 3.0 GPA, but then again, there's no program with mentors or peer educators that are the same, and so we realized there's some academic recovery programs that the mentors they hire are the ones that have gone through the program, so we didn't want to limit those types of programs, so we just stated there needs to be a minimum GPA for your program, whether that's a 3.0, a 3.5, a 2.5, 2.25, whatever the program for you, whatever works best for you, that's whatever GPA you need to set. The second requirement is your interview with the candidates. You need to be interviewing them. And then the third one is that there needs to be at least 2 letters of recommendations or 2 reference checks during the mentor process selection. So this right here, this area is where you just kind of write down the narrative of what you do to meet those requirements. And any necessary documentation right here, this is just things that would help the review team understand how you hire your peer educators. Things could include a job description, a job posting, your interview questions. We use instead of a letter of recommendation, we use a reference form. So just having that reference form attached, just to kind of give the review team a chance to see what documents are you using and what questions are you asking during your selection. Now, we don't look at the quality of those questions, so we're not going to judge you on which questions you're asking. We trust that whatever questions you're using during your interview is appropriate for your program. So what we do is we just make sure that you have that process in place. So we are not a judge and jury of how well you're doing it, just that you are having those requirements in place for certification. The next is the amount or duration of mentor training. Again, this is how much of the training are you offering? And this is where you would, any documentation right here would be your agendas for training and documenting your time, how many hours are they getting during the semester, during the year. That needs a total at least 15 hours. Some of the issues we see here will be if you count a training, let's say you did it from 8 to 5, but 2 of those hours were for a lunch break, and you had 30-minute, snack breaks and bathroom breaks. Those don't count towards training, and that's kind of where we see people kind of just lumping in an all-day training as a total hours. And really, we do look at an hour is an hour. So if you're training on a certain topic, how long are you training for those required topics? So modes of mentor training, again, this is basically how are you delivering that training. Most people tend to do the face-to-face live training. Of the 15 hours, you are able to do 3 hours of asynchronous training. So if there's some online modules, or for us, we use our FERPA and our Title IX trainings. Those are online modules that they do on their own. So that's not something that we do during our when we have them in person for training. But you can use up to 3 hours of those 15 for online training. So here's where we ask what types of modes are you using for mentor training. And then the areas and topics, again, that's just helpful when you're submitting your agenda. What are the topics? Here we kind of want to see, I'm getting that internet is unstable again. I apologize. Been having issues all week with it. So with the documentation here, again, we ask that you submit 1 or 2 of your trainings. So if you're doing something on leadership styles or learning styles, just submitting a PowerPoint or handouts or things that you use, submitting that as well, so we can kind of see what you're covering and making sure that those topics are in line with the CRLA topics. And this chart is really the most important thing on this application because it'll really help you break down your trainings and the amount of time spent on each one. So if you do an all-day training, here's where you can break out which topics, which workshops you are doing, and which required topic of IM or the certification that you're achieving. So this is a very helpful chart for the review team as well, because they match it up with your agenda and make sure that you are having an accurate count of your training hours. Required mentor experience, again, that's that second prong of the leader certification. This is how you track their hours. So for us, with our SI leaders, this is the number of hours that they're in their SI sessions doing that mentoring and meeting with their mentees during the week. So we keep a track of that. Other programs are more difficult. We have our freshman mentors that meet 1 or 2 hours throughout the week with their mentee, and they have to keep a log of that. So really what we're asking is, how are you keeping track? Is it a timesheet? Is it a log sheet? How do you keep track of their experience, and how are they going to meet that 50 hours of experience? And the final category down here is the mentor evaluation. And again, we just want to make sure that you've hired them, you've trained them, they've got their experience. Now it's time to evaluate how well they did. So the three things we look for here, that your mentors are evaluated annually. The second thing is that the mentees are also surveyed on their experience. And the third thing is that those results are shared with the mentor. You can keep the mentees' information private, but just that the results of the survey and evaluation are shared with the mentors. That way they can learn from the positive things they're doing or things that they need to improve. So those are the four big things. Again, hiring, training, experience, and evaluation. And this form is a way of just kind of breaking down each of those things and showing the review team how you accomplish those. If you're planning on applying in the future, again, all this will look very similar, except it's on an online form that you can submit and attach. So once you fill out this form, this is step one. Step two would be uploading this form and all of the necessary files to Dropbox. And then step three is sharing that Dropbox with myself, paying the fee, and then from there we submit it to the review team. And then the review team takes about 4 to 5 weeks to oversee the application, and they look through it thoroughly. There are multiple eyes on the review, and then any feedback they get, they send to me, and then we chat about their notes. And then we want everyone to be certified. People often get nervous, like, oh, I'm going to pay the $150 fee. I'm going to submit my application, and then it's going to get rejected. I've never rejected anyone. We do work with programs to clarify certain things, or say, here you only have 14 hours of training. You counted your lunch hour as your 15th hour, so make sure you add an additional hour. Or can you explain or kind of clarify how you hire your mentors? So things that we come back to the program for their application is very much small things and things that can be clarified within 1 or 2 emails. So if you're looking at applying, don't let the thought of being rejected or being not approved stop you from wanting to apply. Are there any questions so far?
To unmute yourself, if you simply move your cursor over your name, you'll see that unmute comes to the top there, and you can click unmute and unmute yourself. It automatically mutes all the participants so that we don't get any background noise. And then also down at the bottom, the chat box, which you can click chat down at the bottom of the window, and then you can type in a question there, and we can get that information from there also. So either way, any questions that you may have, this is really the purpose. We had several evaluations that folks just wanted to know more about the application process for becoming a certified program. And so this is a little different webinar today. This is certainly a time that you can ask any questions that you might have about either developing a mentor program or about your program becoming a certified program.
And if there are no questions right now, or something pops up later, which is often the case, this is a lot of information to take in at once. It took me hearing this presentation 3 times before I really understood the nuances of each category. So if you think of something later, again, feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat below. It's super simple. It's just mike@utdallas.edu. So if anything pops up in the future, please feel free to send me an email, and I'm fairly responsive when it comes to answering these questions, because I know the quicker we respond to them, the better it'll be. So if there are no questions currently, I'm going to move on to the last part of what I plan to talk about today, and it's going to be the changes coming up. So if you are in the boat of this sounds fantastic, but I'm not ready to apply yet, I'm going to talk about some of the changes that you'll see if you start thinking about certification for the next year. And really it starts with those requirements that I mentioned. Again, going down from 15 hours of training to 10, that's a big one. and then going from the 50 hours of training to 25. So those are the two big changes. The other big change is, of course, it's going to an online form, which I think I feel it's going to be easier to do. It's less cumbersome than a form and attaching documents in a Dropbox. And the last thing that I wanted to mention about the changes, right now we just have, I keep talking about required topics. I didn't dive into that because that's going to be one of the visuals that's going to change. Right now we just have, for level 1 certification, there are required topics such as the role of a peer mentor, mentoring do's and don'ts, professional ethics of mentors, establishing rapport and motivating mentees. So we have a handful of required topics for level 1 and level 2 and level 3. But for in the future, there will be different categories that you can basically pick and choose your own curriculum from, which it's going to be easier to, the topics are still going to be there. They're just going to be in different category forms. So it's almost like a choose your own curriculum instead of making you guess the additional elective hours that make up the 15 hours. Those are really the big changes. Again, if you're looking to apply in the spring, by all means, everything we talked about today will be applicable. But if certification is something that's in your distant future, it'll look a little different, and then I'll probably come back on here and explain the changes once those are launched, and show everyone the online submission form and how to navigate that. But in the meantime, that's all the updates I have about applying and certifying. Again, it is a big task to take on, and I don't recommend doing it all in one sitting. I recommend, letting it stew and adding to the application bit by bit, or taking on one section at a time. But if any questions pop up, again, feel free to email me or give me a call, and I'll be happy to answer any of the questions you have about certifying or possible ideas for training in the future as well. Any questions or comments about certification?
I'm looking at the chat box and I don't see any questions, Michael. I have posted the College and Reading Learning Association a PDF of the PowerPoint that we presented whenever we had a previous webinar on developing a program, so that
Yes.
folks that were not able to attend can look at that PowerPoint. Also, you can go back under our events page from our website, which is fcsua.org, and you can watch the entire webinar that Mike did previously on simply developing a program. Today is more focused on completing the documentation and submitting the application. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to write those into the chat box over at the, it's to my right. I assume it's your right also, probably.
Yes.
Okay. We do have an evaluation of today's webinar that we would like for you to complete. And so we're going to be posting that in just a moment in the chat box so that you can go to that link and provide an evaluation. Would you talk, Michael, just a little bit about the strategically planning the level for the level of peer mentor certification that you might be working towards? That's just another thing that I think is something that's very valuable to folks.
Yeah, so level 1, there are 3 levels of certification. Level 1 is the basic certification. Level 2 is the advanced mentor certification. Level 3 is the master mentor certification. And each topic builds upon itself. Let me see if I can actually go to the slide from the last presentation. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Share. All right, can y'all see that one?
Yes.
All right, so here we go. So level 1, level 2, level 3, and they all build upon each other. So at the very basic bottom level, your certified mentor, that's going to be your level 1. That's going to be your 15 hours of training, your 50 hours of experience. If you have a large, robust program, or if you have mentors that stay longer than a year or so, some programs have their peer educators for 2 or 3 years. Some only have them for a semester. So it all depends on how your program is built. But if you want to continue the professional development of the leaders, level 2 kind of builds on top of that. So there are more advanced levels when you look into level 2. So for example, some of those topics that are required are things like conflict resolution, mentoring boundaries, ways of mentoring, cultural awareness, how to advise on like coursework or majors, things that a basic mentor maybe not get into. So level 2 is kind of building on that advanced curriculum, and then level 3 is the same thing. It builds upon the levels 1 and 2, and it includes some more higher level. This is where you would start to see training on how to train, or how to lead your leader. So how to train like peer supervisors. So supervising and training your peers is the topic that we do for level 3. And you'll see them get their experience by basically being team leaders and leading meetings or leading other trainings for level 1 and 2. So that's where you'll see your advanced and your master get that deeper professional development. And again, I don't recommend level 3 for programs where you only have a mentor or leader for a semester or 2. That's really the ones that are going to be in it for the long haul. The reason is because each level has an additional requirement for training. So level 2, you're adding 10 additional hours of training and 25 additional hours of experience. Level 3, you're looking at 10 additional hours on top of that, and then 25 additional hours of experience. So if you were to submit for a level 3 program certification, that means you're offering up to 35 hours of training and up to 100 hours of experience through the history of your program, like however long someone would stay in your program. So that's typically why you see bigger programs or programs that keep their leaders for 2 or 3 years, because they're able to spread out the experience hours and the training hours over the course of 2 to 3 years. So when deciding on what type of certification, what level you're going to apply, just take a look at how long your leaders are staying and what is your bandwidth. Are you the one doing training? Are you capable of doing 35 hours of training or 25 hours of training? Some people run one person operations and they're not able to do that many. So really just keep an eye on how long you keep your leaders and how much bandwidth you have for providing the training or providing the experience hours. So that's what I would recommend there on that one.
Thank you. That gives a lot of clarification there. Well, our evaluation has been is there in the chat window. So if you could click on that and complete the evaluation at the end of the webinar, we would certainly appreciate your input on the webinar, so that we have webinars that meet the needs of our programs and those interested in creating Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition programs. And are there any other questions before we end our webinar today? Well, Mike, I'd like to thank you for presenting today and sharing about the application process. I feel like I have a better grasp on it. And this webinar will be posted tomorrow on our website. And so feel free to watch this again. And then just a reminder that there's also a previous webinar from December of 2018 on the developing a peer mentoring program. So I'm seeing just no questions. So we'll go ahead and end the webinar. And again, if you will click on the evaluation, it would be greatly appreciated. Again, Michael, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. You guys have a good day. Thank you.
You, Michael. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.